Pieces of Hate with Paul Elam and Tom Golden. Episode 1, Single Motherhood.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. I'm Paul Elam with a voice for men, and welcome to Pieces of Hate. And I am with my co-host, the one and only, the inimitable Tom Golden from menaregood.com. Hi, Tom. How you doing?
Hey, Paul. I'm very happy to be here.
I'm happy to have you here. Listen, to explain to the audience a little bit about what we're doing here with Pieces of Hate, Tom and I have had extensive discussions, of course, about the literature, the media that's out there that comes from women, that comes from feminists, that comes from mangina cucks, that comes from the entire blue pill world. And there's a lot of advice in that. And we notice that it's imparted in sections like 8, 10, whatever. Here's the 10 things you don't do. Here's 8 things you're supposed to do. So we thought we'd do our own in that respect. And the first one is based off an article called 8 Things That You Should Never Say to a Single Mother. Now, full disclosure here, we don't have the article anymore. We set out to do this a few weeks ago and kept having technical issues doing it on another platform because neither one of us were thrilled about doing this on the Google platform. And it kept screwing up. So we decided to do it in a Hangout. And in the meantime, we lost the article. But never fear, it's not really a problem.
Who cares?
You know that article. You can Google 8 Things to Never Say to a Single Mother and you'll find it. But you already know it's a full of shit piece of fluff. You know that. And we don't need to bore you with the details of all that garbage.
Oh, we're going to go into the details.
Yeah, well, we're going to it our way.
There you go.
Not necessarily their way. But as I recall, Tom, the article had really lots of great stuff in it, most of which I assume never really happened to single mothers. Or didn't happen very often, or wasn't a real big, I mean, if you're a single mother, maybe living in Section 8 housing on the dole, dead-end life, looking for some guy to come rescue from it, I think 8 Things Not to Say to You is probably the least on your list of priorities. Yes. But let's talk about that a little bit. What were some of the 8 things that we were never supposed to say to single mothers?
Yeah, before I say the first one, to me, it's just important to note that the whole article was a way of protecting a class of people, the single mothers, to make sure that no one questions them at all, which is really a pretty unbelievable thing to begin with. But the very first one, Paul, was, aren't you going to get married again soon? I mean, that was the question, never to say to a single mother, aren't you going to get married again soon?
I got to say, I agree with that one. I mean,
yes.
I hate to do this. I hate to agree with some blue pill fluff that's out there in the world. But when I meet single mothers, the first thing on my thought that I think of is, I hope you don't marry somebody else. I really hope you don't, because that guy is going to pay. You've got your own baggage from your life. Now you got baggage in the form of kids and you've run off the father. So now you're going to grab some other poor schmuck, give him great sex for 2 weeks so he'll think he found his soulmate. And then you're going to set about ruining his fucking life like you did your last husband. So I'm going to say score 1 on this for the blue pill crowd. I agree. Don't ever say, aren't you going to get married again?
Well, there you go. And number 2, Paul, is you didn't choose your husband wisely.
Okay. And your husband obviously did some pretty screwed up choosing on his own.
Yes.
If there was a husband, I mean, I don't think we should assume that there was a husband just because a woman is dragging around some welfare tickets with her.
That's a very good point.
There hasn't necessarily been a husband, and there, at that point shouldn't be, going back to point 1. But of course, exactly what you were saying, Tom, this is written about protecting them from any sort of introspection, not just criticism, but protecting them from self-examination, protecting them from challenging their own choices and decisions in life, making sure they get to go through life with this "you go girl" thing. Single moms are they're the hardest working people in the world. They're the heroes of our society. The welfare queens that are spitting out sociopaths that grow up and go to prison are the heroes of our society.
And you can't say a word against them. You can't say one word that might question them. Unbelievable. Crazy.
Crazy. But
go number 3?
Huh? Sure. Let's go number 3.
Number 3. Isn't it nice to have a man in the house?
For the man?
Yeah, and that's what she's saying. Never to ask a single mother. Never ask her if it's might be nice to have a man in the house.
I'm sort of mixed on this one. And let me tell you why. A man in the house is the best thing in the world that ever happened to a child.
I'm with you on that one.
There's no disputing that. If you go through Warren Farrell's book, The Father and Child Reunion, you look at the numbers, you look at the devastating consequences of male absence in the lives of children, then you've got to conclude that the best thing for that child is to have a man in the house. But of course, a whole lot of single mothers couldn't care less about what was best for their child. These are the same women that say, I don't need a man to have a baby.
Right.
Of course you do. And as Chris Rock said, well, you can drive a car with your feet if you want to, but that doesn't mean it's supposed to be done. And he was absolutely dead right.
Yes.
But yeah, if you want what's best for your children, you will find a stable male, and stable, boring ass male who doesn't beat you, doesn't cheat on you. In other words, most men.
And who's going to parent in a way that's very different from the way you do.
And that is one of my big things with single mothers. Having met and actually married one at one point in my life, I never saw a more inept parent in my life than her. And I've seen a ton of single mothers just like her. And what they did, their idea of discipline with kids was to scream no 50 times while the kid is doing what it wants to anyway, and then not follow through and prevent the child from doing what you were saying no about, and then just giving up, and then feeling guilty for having screamed all that, and then going out and buying the kid a present to apologize, not for the shitty parenting they're getting, but for the fact that she even attempted to set a boundary with the child. And this is why, honestly, and again, I'm all for MGTOW. I'm all for the marriage strike. I think that marriage right now as it stands is just a horrific deal for men. You've got to have some kind of screw loose to go into a marriage right now. But if I'm just talking about the well-being of the children for those single mothers, no doubt about it. The best thing that they could do is secure a man in their lives that will provide the emotional and intellectual consistency that only men provide that well. And of course, people will scream, women can do that. No, they can't.
I would have to agree with you there. You know, the men I've known as fathers naturally set limits. You know, they just do it naturally. Here's the way it's going to be. And if you cross that line, you're in trouble, you know? And the women I've known don't have that same kind of skill. Now, I'm sure there's always exceptions to the rule, but I think that's the basic rule that I've seen.
Yes, unicorn alert. Yes.
And you know, an interesting thing that's happening now is that they're realizing that this limit setting that men do is involved with teaching the child to be empathetic. Because as the father says, you know, you're not going to have ice cream until you get your broccoli. Oh, but daddy, no, you got to eat your broccoli. And the father sticks to it. And the kid learns he's got to eat the broccoli first when he's around dad, then he gets the ice cream. And what they're saying is that this whole experience of the child has to learn how to see the world through the father's eyes, because the father wants him to do one thing and the kid wants to do another. So he has to learn how to see the world through the father's eyes. And that is the very rudiment of empathy. And it's through this repeated understanding of the child, of shifting their desires based on what someone else wants, not what they want, that helps them develop the skill of being empathetic. And so that's why, that's why we know now that fathers are the ones who are teaching empathy. And that without dads in the home, we are in danger of having a whole generations of children who are less empathetic.
And that nails it, Tom. I read a couple of years ago, I read an article that was based on a survey of a whole bunch of CEOs of mid-size and large companies about the workforce that was coming in, particularly of young men. And their biggest complaint was that they had no concept of responsibility and no concept of working well with other people. In other words, they lacked empathy.
Yes.
And we see this in a lot of young people today. And I don't mean to sound, like my old man saying these kids are going to trash. They've been shorted of what they were owed as children that would help them develop that empathy. The other side of that is that children need boundaries to feel safe. And I don't care who says what about it. That is a truth that you cannot deny. When children don't have limits on their behavior, they don't feel safe. So
Yes.
They're constantly testing all the time to say, how far can I go? How far can I go? And it looks like they're just being oppositional and defiant. But what they're really saying is, somebody stop me.
Somebody say no.
Somebody say no. Somebody
Yep.
show
Yep.
me the way in life.
Yep.
And single mothers don't do it.
Not like the dads do.
Nope.
It's true.
And it's a bad outcome for them, because when you're raised not knowing what boundaries are and not knowing what empathy is, what does that combination tell you? No boundaries and no empathy.
Yeah. Trouble.
Sociopathy.
Trouble.
And that's what single mothers are producing. That's why their children are filling our prisons.
Yes. Should we go to number 4?
Sure, let's go to number 4. Did you actually find the points?
I actually had the points written down.
Oh, good. Okay,
I just forgot the link to the article,
okay, no problem.
which we could find if we needed to. But the important thing is
I'm
the
sure
points.
our viewers will forgive us.
So the fourth thing she says, never to ask a single mother or never to tell a single mother, you should really start dating. You should start dating. And I think Paul would agree with that.
Yep, I agree. You should not start dating. You should go MGTOW monk
Yeah.
if you're a
go
single mother.
Find some men to come in and help you with your parenting style. Okay, so number 5 is, you're a threat to me and other married couples.
Bullshit. Bullshit.
Have you ever heard of anyone saying anything like that to anyone, a single mother or an unsingle mother or a single father? You're a threat to me and other married couples.
Well, what can I say, Tom? You know what they say, projection. It's not just a room in the back of the theater. That was coming straight from the writer.
Yeah.
Who was probably a single mother.
She is.
Who was probably alienated by female friends who were still married.
Good point.
And because they felt maybe a little bit threatened about, single hot for mama hanging around all the time. But have I ever heard anybody say that to a single mother? You're a threat to me?
No.
No, you're a threat to my tax dollars. But
the only thing I can think of is like when I know with widowed people, they feel like a widowed person is a threat to couples, but that's a completely different thing altogether.
Yes, it is a completely different thing.
Again, 1 through 5 so far are all about protecting them from any kind of criticism or any kind of feedback about what they're doing and how they might need to do it differently. So it's like we're making them completely unassailable. And it's crazy. It's absolutely insane. The thing it reminds me of, Paul? This reminds me of the 1960s, when we knew from research that tobacco was a terrible thing. It was causing cancer, right? But people still pushed cigarettes. Marlboro Man, and the what was the Virginia Slims line?
You've come a long way,
You've
baby.
come a long way, baby. It's like we pushed people into this smoking thing. Oh, and smoking's good. This is wonderful. And we're doing the same thing now with single mothers.
And they are a carcinogen on society. There's no
Oh.
doubt. And I need to clarify here. Look, I get it. There are women who get married to guys that turn out to be real assholes. I know that. And sometimes you can't avoid a marital breakup. There are women who get married to loving husbands and the man dies and they turn out to be widows.
Yes.
What we're talking about here, though, is the big bulk of women who are in the I don't need a man to have a baby crowd, who view men and their relationships as disposable, and who rationalize. And I've heard a bunch of single mothers and a bunch of women contemplating divorce. When I've talked to them about the impact on their children, it's the same thing every time. Oh, it's okay. They'll adjust. It's all right.
Well,
And no, they won't. They'll be 15 years later still figuring out if it was their fault that the marriage broke up.
it's just simply crazy. This same writer that did this article has a blog, and I looked at one of the articles on the blog, and they're literally bragging about being single mothers. Is that the title was "Single Mom Statistics Seriously Show How Vital We Are." How vital we are.
To what?
Well,
To the prison industrial complex?
listen to this. Millennial single mom statistics. 57% of babies born to millennials were out of wedlock. 64% of millennial moms reported at least one birth out of wedlock. It's like they're bragging about it. They're bragging about it. It's like, wake up. You're bragging about smoking. Like this is insane.
This goes back to Warren's statistics. When you look back at children who, and I think the number that he came up with in the end, who were more than 35% out of the lives. They needed a minimum of 35% of their lives to be spent with male influence or with a father figure.
Yeah.
And the ones who didn't make that, prison incidents skyrockets, delinquency, truancy, drug abuse, teen pregnancy, every psychosocial factor you can possibly imagine by which we define the quality of life for those young people, they go right into the gutter when there's no dad.
I've got a list of them if you want to hear it.
Sure.
Suicide, rape, job failure, low empathy, like we talked about, delinquency, anxiety, bullying, drug abuse, early pregnancy, smoking, high school dropouts, depression, alcohol abuse, and being bullied. Whew.
Yay!
And here's the deal. I mean, the deal is that the research, the recent research is showing that these things are not just correlated with fatherlessness, they're causative. The research has now gotten down to the point where they've decided that not having a father in the home causes these kinds of things. That's unbelievable.
And we
social
really
science
didn't
research never says causes. They always say, "Oh, this is correlated with this. This is correlated." No, they're saying not having a dad in the home causes this stuff to happen. Wow.
And of course, we didn't need those studies to know that.
Well, maybe we didn't, but I mean, a lot of people would. You would think.
All you would have to do is go interview. And I used to work in a youth correctional facility here in Texas that was just chock full of gangbangers. That's all we had there. They were all there for murder.
Oof.
All of them, all 300 of them,
Oof.
some for multiple murders. And I met one that I remember who had a strong involved father. None of the others did. None of them. They were all fatherless kids that grew up. One of them, and this is really terrible, but I think it needs to be said. One of them was there for stabbing a 12-year-old girl about 80 times, stabbing her to death and raping her. Another one was there because he ran into a homeless guy and set him on fire. There were guys there that killed people on dares, that killed people as a part of gang initiations. And what is a gang leader but an alternative father figure?
Right.
For these kids that don't have fathers.
Yes.
That's why I don't have any sympathy. I mean, I I get it for the women that don't have a choice. But when there's a choice and these women, and now she's bragging about it on her blog, yay, look at us. We're producing all these illegitimate kids that are filling prisons, filling gangs, killing people, selling drugs, suiciding. And she's bragging about it. What we need to do is get that article when we post live with this. And by the way, we're doing this on International Men's Day. It'll probably be tomorrow before everybody sees it. So happy International Men's Day to everybody, at least to those of you who are celebrating it for men and not women, which could be a whole nother discussion, another piece of hate in this conversation.
Oh, God.
But
So true.
We need to, just like Jordan Peterson, who I may have some differences with, but I also have some real similarities. He's proposing a database of all these gender studies people and the postmodernist idiots that are now infecting academia with this very sick kind of thinking about single mothers and other subjects. He's proposing a database identifying all of them. I think we need to do our part to identify those who are out there promoting single mothers the same way the tobacco companies did tobacco back in the 60s when they knew it was killing their clients.
Yes. Yes, I agree. And, a message to all the men out there who might be listening, if you're spending time with your kids, good, increase it, do more. You are vital to your children's health. It's good to fight for that. Keep fighting. You're an important part of their lives. Please keep fighting to be a part.
And if you lose the fight, do your best not to blame yourself.
Indeed, because you're in a system that's completely skewed and it's completely unfair to men. So, if you lose the fight, so be it. You put up what you could.
It is unfair, but what the hell? That helps make more single mothers without fathers around, which is exactly what our system does. It's really awful. I mean, we're trying to have some fun with this, but we're talking about one of the most overarching problems in our society today is single mothers. They're cancer. They're an absolute cancer.
I think it's the problem in our culture, right?
It is.
Yeah.
It is. If we didn't have so many single mothers, we wouldn't have young men that are so easily turned into mangina cucks by the women's political establishment by the time they get to college, if they're one of the lucky ones that actually makes it to college, because a lot of kids with single fathers don't even make it through high school.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what else we got on this list?
Oh, God. Next, she says, another thing not to ever say to a single mother is, you're not up for the job. You're not up for the job. So in other words, you can only say positive things. You're up for the job. You're perfect the way you are. You're wonderful. Don't say you're not up for the job.
And your child dropping out of school is proof of that, of just how wonderful you are. And maybe if you're a real good single mom, your daughter will get pregnant at 13. Good grief. I mean, I find it really sad, Tom, that we're actually having to have this conversation.
It's crazy.
That we're having to correct people for promoting something that is so toxic to the whole world around us.
Completely toxic. And the thing that shocks me is the moat around single mothers that this kind of article builds, that protects them, that keeps them safe from any kind of feedback. It's like, wow, that's really weird, Oh, well. Okay, the next one, Paul.
What's the next one?
Do your children have the same dad? Never ask that to a single mother.
Because it might embarrass her.
Indeed. Oh, and number 8, the last one is there 8? Yeah. Never say to a single mother, you're not a real single mom. You're not a real single mom.
Well, once her kid fucks up, you can say it to her. Once her kid's life is wrecked and their future is destroyed, you can say you're a real single mom.
Crazy, crazy.
Okay, so there you have it, folks. There's 8 points from a feminist, I assume, writer who is glorifying the undermining of the future of children through incompetent single motherhood, which is the main form of single motherhood. So do we have some retorts for this? Some things that we would like to say to single mothers?
I think we each have four, because this is pieces of hate, right?
Yeah,
So we'll
this is
take four
pieces of
each.
hate. We'll take four each. We'll
Yeah.
do our best. I'll be, I will say in advance that I prepared those 4 weeks ago when we first started trying to do this. And tonight I'm going to be winging it.
Because you lost them.
Because I lost track of them. But that's okay. I don't think I'll have any trouble coming up with 4 things I'd like to say to single mothers.
Shouldn't be too hard. Well, I'll start off. The first thing I would like to ask single mothers is, do you know about the fatherless research? Do you know that not having a dad in the home is hurting your kids? I don't think that would go over very big, but I think it's an important question to ask, you know?
And that'll bring me to my first thing I'd like to say, assuming that their answer to Tom's question is no, please get away from me. I don't know about that. The first thing I would like to say is perhaps a little more pointed is please, whatever you do, don't have any more children. Go get a tubal ligation. Learn how to keep your legs together. Get some birth control pills. I know they're not healthy, but single mothers are a lot more unhealthy than birth control pills. But the thing is, you have already made mistakes. You may have 1 or 2 mistakes that you're taking with you to the grocery store every time you go. But the thing is, if you learn what's happening, you don't have to make more mistakes. Don't have any more children. One, I don't want to pay for them. And I'm tired of paying for Section 8 housing. I'm tired of paying for, in so many cases, thug fucking layabouts who really aren't mothers of any kind, who just go for the welfare check, which I have to pay for. But above and beyond that, it's the damage to the children and to the culture around them that needs to stop. So the first thing for me, don't have any more kids, please.
Yeah. My next one, Paul, would be just to ask them, how does it feel to be unassailable? Because that's a position that no man can really ever understand. Because men are questioned every step of the way. You know, we expect it. And we also have ways of dealing with whatever criticism comes about. But I would just be curious to hear what a single mom says about that. I mean, how does it feel to be unassailable? I'm sure that she would roll her eyes and say, oh, I'm not unassailable. People criticize me all the time, but I don't know.
Well, and you look at it in the same framework. If we've got a man who has 6 children by different women, he's assailable. I mean, the whole of the culture is more than happy to come down on him.
Yes.
It's like, what are you doing?
Yes.
Running around being a baby daddy in 5
Yeah.
different states.
Yeah.
And you're contributing to what it's costing us across the board in welfare and in the social costs of criminal children and those that grow up that way. And so, yeah, I think that's a good question. What does it feel like to be beyond reproach?
Yeah.
Even though you're probably, your life is a real mess. I agree. Good question.
Yeah. What's your next one?
Question number 2 for me is, does it bother you that because of your lifestyle, that your children's future is imperiled? That their tendency to one day be a college graduate, to have a professional life, to accomplish things in life, to make things happen. Does it bother you that the environment you've created for your child is one that undermines that happening and gives them a much higher chance for failure at life? And if it does bother you, what are you going to do about it?
Yes. And that was my next question. Was, are you trying to do anything to get your kids especially your boys, contact with either the father or men in general? Are you doing anything to do that? You know,
That's a real important point
and I think
because
that I don't see a lot of single mothers thinking in those lines, but I really think that given the givens, what we know about the research, if I was a single mom, I would be trying everything I could do to get my children to be around men and the father.
one of the things, I'm glad you brought that one up. One of the things I remember back in the 80s, the poet Robert Bly brought up at one of his workshops that I saw videotaped, is he made a pretty stunning declaration to the men in the workshop. He said, if you are not in some way invested in the life of a young man, you're hurting him.
Yes.
And at first I was kind of like, oh man, don't pile that on men. But you know something? There is some truth to that. Our children, especially young men, depend on male figures to have any bearing in life, to have any sense of a compass of where they're going, of identity, of so many things that are important to their development. And even the involvement of a mentor, like through Big Brothers and Sisters or through a church outfit or whatever, but the involvement of an older male that can spend enough time to convey a message to the child that they're important, that they have meaning in his life, is enough to keep a lot of young people out of trouble. And regardless of whatever mess anyone's made of their life, I hope they remember that there is always something they can do to try to make it a little bit better.
Yes. Yeah, I agree.
Are we ready for my next one?
Yeah, man, go.
I would like a rebate on my taxes. I want single mothers all across the United States to lobby President Trump, to lobby the Republicans, and to lobby the Democrats to work out tax breaks for single unmarried men and married men who are paying the bill for all this recklessness, this personal recklessness in women's lives. I want some of my money back. Actually, I'd like all of it back, but I know I'm not going to get that. I'm not even going to get part of it. But the point of this was to ask the question, what would I ask? I really would. I would ask single mothers, what are you going to do to pay me back for supporting your lifestyle and your irresponsibility? Show me the money.
Yeah, interesting question.
Wasn't so much of a question as it was a statement, but
It's that too.
yeah, that too.
Yeah. Yeah. I was just thinking about it. I was also thinking that we started this whole thing off by screwing things up in the 1960s by forcing families, particularly black families, to not have a man in the home in order to get welfare. That whole crazy idea. And we forced fathers out of the home. So I'm thinking now, why not make it so that people don't get welfare checks unless there is a father in the home? Why not?
I'm glad you brought that up. That to me is one of the, there's always been this sort of uneasy relationship between white and black MRAs because according to a lot of the black MRAs I've talked to, and I think they're right on with what they're saying, that these policies, everything, have disproportionately affected black men. And I totally agree. I know that they have. And what happened in the 60s was that white liberals, full of stupid white guilt, moved in and basically set up policies that paid black women and to have babies out of wedlock. And it has done more harm to the black community than anything since Jim Crow.
Yep, particularly black males.
Yes, black males, and the way they get trashed out by their women too. I mean, there's a lot of people that say, and I've seen black women very resentful about black men choosing white women. And all I can say is, well, Should have. If all black women are like you, I'd choose somebody else too.
Yeah.
Because most of the other time they're totally demeaning to black men, running them down, telling them they're no good, and at the same time turning to white plantation owners who have the tax money to hand them. It's a
Yeah.
it's a very, very unsettling, disturbing situation. But I'm glad you brought that up because it is absolutely true.
I mean, we need to find ways to get fathers back in the home. I mean, that's the bottom line. And we need to be creative about it. And why not? Why not?
Well, here's the dilemma. And let me throw this. I got one question left, but I want to throw one at you.
Throw it at me.
How do we get men and fathers back in the home when the home right now is such unsafe ground for so many men? I know for guys like us, we're cool. It's all right. But for a whole lot of men, going to where their ex-wives or ex-girlfriends were, not a good place.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it's a real challenge.
It is. And I think that a part of it's going to have to be a change in mindset, because the feminists have laid down this sort of global mindset about how women have been oppressed and men are the problem and all this bullshit that has just tainted these young people's minds. And we need to do something to change that narrative, change that idea. And of course, gynocentrism fights us every step of the way when you try and do that. But that's got to happen before men are going to be safe in a home again.
It is.
Men need to be admired for who they are. I mean,
yep.
And they need to be respected for all the good things that they do. And we just do not see that anymore. And of course, we know that men are good, right?
Yes, they are.
Indeed,
good.
They are.
And then again, we also know that a lot of the things that we're talking about are the very reasons those men are not in the home.
Yes.
Now,
yes.
To begin with.
Exactly.
I got my final question that's somewhat along those lines.
Yeah.
And again, it's another sort of non-question, it's a statement, but it is a request, which I suppose is a question. Please stop alienating your children from their fathers. I don't care if you don't like the son of a bitch. I don't care if he beat you. I don't care what the situation was. I really don't care. In most cases, that's not it. But stop alienating. You're killing your children by alienating them from their fathers. What you should be doing if you want to be a good single mother is working your ass off to co-parent with your ex, to bring them into the fold of your children's lives and to make them want to. Now, I know I've talked to a lot of women about this and they said, well, that son of a bitch, he doesn't want anything to do with us. Well, no, he doesn't want anything to do with you. And you need to get that straight.
Yes.
Right off the bat, he wants nothing to do with you, and it's because when you're sitting here talking to me about him, you don't say his name, you just say that son of a bitch or that bastard. Well, I wonder why he wants nothing to do. I wonder why he felt powerless to do anything as an involved parent on the scene. And this is what we see so many times. Guys try and they try, and the mother alienates them. The mother makes the father the bad guy. The kid starts hating them, and then the father says, "Screw it, I can't do this anymore."
Right.
And they're broken and they're hurting when they make that decision.
Terrible,
they want so badly
Yep.
to be a part of their children's lives.
Yes.
Yet the ex is making it all impossible for them. Lady, you ought to be rolling out a red carpet for your ex. You ought to be working hard to make it as close as you can to shared parenting. You should be doing all this stuff. Take your resentments about your failed marriage or your failed relationship to a therapist. Give them somebody to listen to about your complaints about how that relationship went. Now grow up and get with your child like an adult parent and figure out what's best for them and go about getting it. So that's my last statement question
I like that
to single
one.
mothers.
I like that one. My last one is kind of self-serving in a way. because it's asking them, are you doing anything to learn about how your boys are different? And, I've seen it over and over again, Paul, that single moms tend to not really understand boys. They just don't understand boys. They have a pretty good understanding of girls because they were one, but they don't have much of a clue about the boys. And here's a clue for you. I wrote a book recently. It's called Helping Mothers Be Closer to Their Sons. And it's literally a manual about to help moms understand their boys in a little bit of a different way and to be able to get closer to them. It talks about how to play with them, how to read to them, how to do this and do that, because they are different from the daughters. They're very different. And I'd just love to see single moms start trying to learn more about their sons and more about their children in general, even if they don't have time. So that's my last one.
And as long as we're at it, I'd like to see them become proficient in understanding boys and their nature, and doing things like allowing them physical outlets and action play instead of putting them on Ritalin because they're too much trouble for you.
And understanding they have a need to do that. It's a physical need to be moving like that. It's not something that they're choosing to do. It's something they have to do.
And I guess to sort of cap things off overall, I want to say, yes, you are physically capable of having a child. Well, you can't have one without a man unless you do artificial insemination. That's still components of a male. You
Yep.
have to have one to get pregnant. But believe it or not, ladies, you really need one if you're going to have a human being in this world.
Yeah.
You really do. And you ought to consider that instead of blowing it off or burying it under some political pablum or listening to this kind of garbage, 8 things that you should never say to a single mother. You've got a big responsibility on your shoulders. With children alone, you damn well ought to be asked all kinds of questions.
Indeed. Well said, Mr. Paul. Well said, sir. And I think we can turn it off for tonight.
We can turn it off
with the idea that men are good.
And
as
men
are you.
Are wonderful. All you guys are good.
Indeed.
And even some of you women are pretty,
a lot
pretty
of
average. Yes, they are. There's a lot of great women in this world.
Indeed.
And I don't care who likes that. It's true. But we'll be back next time for another round of Pieces of Hate.
More misandry in the world. We're going to look at it. Good, Paul. We'll see you then.
Take care, guys.
Good night.
Bye-bye.